My first question is, Mr. John McCain, as a result of the United States and Vietnam relation in the past 20 years, according to you, what cooperation area will be expected to see the most successful and clear development in the next 20 years?
Was the accounting of those who were missing in action. And by the way, the United States government is working very hard to work with the Vietnamese government to help with an accounting for Vietnamese military members who are still listed as missing in action. I think that was the first step forward, and that made it possible for the normalization of relations. Honestly, I think economic ties have been of the utmost importance. How many years ago you didn't grow a single coffee bean, and now Vietnam is the world's second largest producer of coffee, which is exported to the United States. Every time I go to Starbucks, I think I have Vietnamese coffee. But most importantly, I think of all, is putting the wounds of war behind us so that we can have an attitude of progress, whether it be in trade, whether it be in culture, whether it be in education. How many Vietnamese students are in the United States?
17,000.
17,000 students, Vietnamese, are receiving an education in the United States today. Those have all been made possible by an effort, I think, to have healed the wounds of war and recognize that it is in both our countries' interest to have a relationship that not only helps your generation, but also helps the generation of those who fought here.
We all have to recognize the central role that Senator McCain played in bringing our two countries together. No one had the credibility and the political status to do that as well as Senator McCain did. And it's interesting, only my thought, John, is that because of your efforts, literally the lifetime of these students, we, the United States and Vietnam, have been working together. And we hope that your lifetime and the lifetime of your children will work close together. And thank you.
I have two questions for you. The first question is that on the scale from 1 to 10, how much do you raise the possibility of the U.S. ratify the Law of the Sea Convention to protect the rights of the U.S. in South China Sea? For example, freedom of navigation, freedom of aviation, the innocent passage of worship, and also all the conventional rights which has not been considered as customary international law. And the second question, which is shorter, let me remember it.
It happens to me all the time.
The former U.S. PACOM commanders had a very clear position in South China Sea dispute. But yesterday, the U.S. has announced a new commander for U.S. PACOM. And I wonder whether it make any changes in the strategy of the U.S. in South China Seas. And thank you very much.
Thank you. First of all, I happen to be a supporter of ratification of the Law of the Sea. On a scale of 1 to 10 right now, I would probably say 3, unfortunately, because there is just not the support in the United States Senate for ratification. I'd be interested in my colleagues' view. The decision about how to handle the situation in the islands in the East Sea really lies with the President of the United States. And I was very supportive of the overflight of a U.S. aircraft, despite the Chinese attempt to force that aircraft to identify themselves. That in itself doesn't seem like much, but if an American aircraft is forced to identify itself over international waters by anybody, then that is an abrogation of all the principles of freedom of negotiations. So I believe that President Obama, and he will be coming here, will make a very strong statement about our adherence to international law and his commitment to maintaining the freedom of navigation. Now, I do not believe that that means we're going to have a war with China, but I do believe that it means that the United States of America and our allies will take those necessary steps that preserve the freedom of navigation and international law. Anybody? Jack?
We have not ratified the Law of the Sea Treaty. In fact, it has been on the floor of the Senate for about 3 decades, I believe. It's been a long, long time. But we do follow the principles of the Law of the Sea, and they are international norms, and we expect every other country to follow those norms also, including the Chinese. So we are committed to the principles of the Law of the Sea Treaty, and we hope every other country is too. And again, I share Senator McCain's position in terms of ratification. It would probably be very, very low probability, but that does not stop us from insisting that these rules be followed by all of our civilized nations. And with respect to Admiral Harris, the new PACOM commander, I think he will continue in the same direction as his predecessor.
So, but I just think the 2 questions you asked were very, very good questions, very insightful questions. So I compliment you for that. I think to add on to what Senator Reid said, we're going to be actually meeting with Admiral Harris. Our delegation is going to be going to Singapore tonight to take part in the Shangri-La dialogue. So there'll be a lot of discussion about these issues. The American Defense Minister, Ash Carter, is going to be there. We're going to be meeting with him. We'll be meeting with Admiral Harris. So that's a very good question. Secretary Carter then is coming to Vietnam after this, so a lot of focus on the importance of Vietnam. But I would agree with Secretary Reid's answer, which is I think that your question about whether Admiral Locklear or Admiral Harris have different views, I don't think it's a very different view. And in the U.S. system, when somebody of that importance is nominated by the President to take over that position, he first has to come before the Senate Armed Services, which Senator McCain is the chairman of, and get voted on, and they go through hearings. So Admiral Harris went through the hearings on the Senate Armed Services Committee and then was voted on by the entire United States Senate to become the new PACOM commander. So very good question, but I think the answer is he very likely does not have a different view from the other PACOM commander.
And my question is, on March the 28th, Chinese President Xi Jinping, he raised the term of the One Belt, One Road initiatives. And that sees there's undisputed that sees China as undisputed powerhouse in the region. So how does the U.S. remain its relationship and its power, its close power in the region under the new initiative that focusing on economic, but I think it's had a large impact on geopolitical. So how do you view about the initiative One Belt, One Road of China?
As a world superpower, economically, and now they're investing very heavily militarily, as you know. There's no doubt that there have been cyber attacks on the United States of America, on some of our most important industrial information, and we have identified even a building in Beijing that is PLA. So there's no doubt that China is, in my view, sort of flexing their muscles. The 9-dash line is another example. I think that the important move now that all of us should make is to have better coordination between the ASEAN nations to assist nations with maritime capability if they request it, to try to have a dialogue with China, an ongoing dialogue about areas that there is cooperation and there's areas where there is disagreement. And so I think that when we look at the Philippines, we look at Indonesia, Malaysia, these other countries, they have something in common, and that is that they need to have a united front on issues that affect all of their ASEAN relations with China, including Vietnam. I do not believe that the Chinese are interested in conflict, and certainly we are not. But there has to be areas of cooperation, but there also has to be areas where the Chinese are told that is unacceptable. And there's many ways to respond to that behavior besides military. But at the same time, it's important to have a military capability. And there's a difference between seeking conflict and having a military capability, which every nation should have in order to preserve their territorial integrity, which in some ways, at least in the EC, is being threatened by China.
Thank you very much for the question. I would say that there are so many different aspects, not only economically, militarily, as well as the United States rebalances more towards the Pacific, but also other work that can be done not only through our governments and the interaction between the nations of this region, but working together with non-governmental organizations and others and focusing not only militarily, economically, but also on human rights, labor relations. Developing those relationships amongst all of these countries can serve as a pushback against China as they try to exert more authority in this region. So I think there are a number of things that need to be done, and it does go beyond economics and military. But all of these activities are nested together. They all fit together very well as you look at a broad perspective. You can't just focus on one or another. They all have to work hand in hand.
Senator John McCain, do you think that China has become the main push force for the further cooperation between Vietnam and U.S.? Why and why not?
Agreement on the need that Vietnam has for maritime capabilities. I don't think that would have been an issue or an agenda item if it had not been for the Chinese behavior. But frankly, I think our relationship goes much deeper than China. I think it goes back to a time of great sorrow, time of bloodletting, a time of tragedy in families all over Vietnam and America, and a strong desire to heal those wounds and put the conflict behind us. I think that is the major reason by far for the kind of relationship that we have today. I can tell you that it has been healing to our veterans, and I'm told that it's been healing to our Vietnam veterans as well from this country.
Talked about the big forces that are moving the relationship between the United States and Vietnam closer. And of course there's big forces. As you know, the United States has always been a Pacific power as well as a European Atlantic power. But I think it's also very important to remember it's not just big forces. It can be individual initiative. And individuals in the efforts of one person can drive history. And in terms of the U.S.-Vietnam relationship, as Senator Reid mentioned, we're sitting here with the individual certainly in America, who's probably driven that relationship together more than any other person. And if it weren't for Senator McCain, the relationship between Vietnam and the United States would not be nearly as close as it is today. So it's not just big forces of rising powers, it's also the power of individual people on both sides of the relationship.
I would like to mention President William Jefferson Clinton. President Clinton made it his goal when he became the President of the United States to try to heal the relationships between our two countries. And as the President of the United States, I really believe that President Clinton was a very key element in achieving this goal.
what do you think the biggest challenge to the Vietnam and U.S. relation now and 10 years down the road, if we put aside the Chinese factor? So that's my questions. And how can we overcome the challenge to bring the U.S.-Vietnam relation to the next level?
There's been significant progress on the part of the Vietnamese government on human rights, but international organizations, not the United States of America, but international organizations that make judgments on these issues unanimously agree that there has to be additional progress on human rights. And I hope all of you here will dedicate yourselves to that effort. We want every Vietnamese person to have the God-given rights that were guaranteed by Ho Chi Minh back in 1945 when he gave a very eloquent speech in Hanoi. So that is one of the issues that we need to continue to work together on. Could I also say that while we are talking here, it strikes me that literally everybody in this room was born after the Vietnam War was over. And I want to emphasize that the reason why we are here is because you are the future, not only of Vietnam-American relations, but you're the future of Vietnam. And I hope that you will think about as you study and work and become leaders, because you've been very fortunate to be in an institution such as this. This is really a great opportunity for you that many Vietnamese young people will never have. So I hope you will think about your obligation to your fellow citizens, and I hope that you will think about the fact that nothing is greater than to serve a cause greater than your own self-interest. So I hope you will have the time and the energy fairly often to help your fellow citizenry so that all of them might someday have the same opportunity that you have enjoyed in being at this wonderful institution. I thank you very much.